Hello, I'm Mac Brunson. I'm pastor here at Valleydale Church. Let me welcome you to our podcast, our live stream, our archive of sermons, and I hope and pray that God uses this to help you personally. I don't know where you are spiritually. If you've never trusted Christ, I hope today will be the day that you'll put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you are a Christian, I pray this will become a tool that will help disciple you and grow you. Let me encourage you to be in a local church and to support that church with your presence, by using your talents and abilities, and by the giving of your tithe. If you would like to help our ministry above and beyond the tithe that you give to your local church, you can get on valleydale.org and you can find a place where you can contribute and give and help support the ministry here. So thank you for that. If the Lord leads you that way, whether He does or not, doesn't matter to me. I hope that this word helps you today. God bless.
I'm KIRKWOOD BULLIS, worship pastor here at Valleydale Church, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our second panel discussion amidst this COVID-19 crisis. Tonight, we really want to be able to dig in to how we can minister practically, even amidst this impractical, completely unprecedented crisis. It's all because, as a church, we desire to help this busy community know Christ and live for Him. I want to introduce some of our I want to introduce all of our panelists, and then we're going to get started in no particular order. Actually, I'm going to start with furthest from me. Hannah BRASWELL is here. She's our preschool and women's minister. She is all over the place, helps so much, and I'm looking forward to hearing her testimonies because you've had to do a lot of visitation even during this time, socially distanced visitation. And then next to her is Pastor Patrick SAWYER. He is our Community Connections pastor. He's been out in the community doing whatever he can in the midst of this time. We're going to hear some great testimony from him. Dr. Lori Veal is here, who is a beloved choir member and a dear friend, and she's going to be able to speak to many different things. What it's like living as a high-risk person during this time, what it's like being a part of the medical community during this time, and also you've got some college kids at home. We're going to hear some testimony about that. And finally, dear friend and brother Andres Pardo is here. He's the pastor at Iglesia Valleydale, which is our Hispanic congregation that's here, and he's also got some helpful insight to share. But I wanted to start with Pastor Patrick said this right before we got on about how life has changed, because I know you're into fitness. Please retell the story of how your workout life has changed in the midst of COVID-19.
Yeah, well, I go to the gym every day, and it got closed down. So they started doing Zoom workouts. Right? I've never done one of those before. So we get on the call, and they'd say, hey, find something in your house that you can lift. So the heaviest thing I have in the house is kitty litter, a 20-pound bag of kitty litter. So I just hugged that thing and started squatting it, and the trainer in the Zoom call said, is that kitty litter? And I was like, yes, it is. So, yeah. So I'm excited to get back to lifting actual weight.
I can't blame you. Squatting kitty litter is not something, that's not a fate that I would wish upon anyone. I guess except for kitties, of course. But there's, we were talking about just some different funny things that happen to us. Sometimes you just got to laugh so you don't cry in the difficulty that we've all been facing. And Andres, I wanted to start with your testimony of like how that when the crisis hit, you absolutely wanted to get started with ministry immediately. And what happened?
Yeah, I think the first week I reached out to the leaders for Iglesia Valleydale, and I told them, hey, we got to do something. We got to pray about it. We got to go. And they just told me, we're not ready. We're not doing anything. And, I was so ready. I was like, so what are we doing? It was just, I had the wall. I had to pray about it and listen to them and, stay on that.
Well, so I didn't even think about that because that was probably something that God was teaching you personally in the midst of that, about like slowing down. Maybe talk some about that.
It is a battle, because our hearts as a church is to help others, to share the love of Christ. and it was just praying. I gotta be on my knees and listen to him, listen to his voice, and everything from there. It was a huge blessing because we see how God's timing is perfect, and it's not about us; it's about listening to Him.
Well said. So when the time came to move into some more practical ministry, you knew it was God's timing. You knew that it wasn't your timing. That's a good point. But you've really touched on why we're here at all tonight talking about this, because we're all ministers of the gospel in one way or another, and we know what that means day to day if things are, shall we say, normal. And overnight, everything changed, and how we do ministry changed. So over the next several minutes, I want to hear. Obviously, I want to hear from all of you professionally what you're doing in your places of work, but also personally, because this is something that we have to address even amongst our family. Obviously, that's our first call as ministers is in the home, and I know we're all parents here sitting on the stage. But Patrick, I kind of wanted to hear the counterpart to what Andres was saying there, when things first got started, how did you feel, and then what led to you actually being able to do something?
Yeah, the thing that it was frustrating and a lostness for me personally, especially with my role here of community connection, you knew there was so many needs out there, but yet you have to understand, what do you do? I didn't know what to do, and it was trouble to sleep at times because I just didn't know what to do, but I knew there was something that we needed to do. So really just began to pray, very similar to what Andres just said, and God just started to speak to me and started to show me opportunities that we could get involved in the community, because the other thing you have to think about is, yes, there's needs out there, but you also have this whole thing of frightening of getting around people. So how do you serve the community at the same, love them and serve them at the same time, making sure they're safe, plus our people are safe?
Well, maybe, Lori, and I want to hear more about your workplace in particular, someone in the healthcare community, but maybe you could speak to what he's just saying, because when we introduced you, we talked about how you have conditions and taking medications that can make you high risk for something like this. So what was that like as this crisis got underway? Because obviously you have so many people around you who want to love you, want to care for you. Maybe talk a little bit about what that experience was like.
Well, it's certainly, as a healthcare professional, it's been a mixed bag. I mean, the health nerd part of me is just, containing a certain enthusiasm. I mean, we're living history,
We're making history. That's a glass half full. I love it.
I mean, seriously, we try to contain some of that sometimes, but one of the most interesting electives I took in pre-pharmacy was the history of epidemics. And I mean, seriously, we're living history, but on the flip side of that, I do have autoimmune conditions and am on immune suppressants. So very much my enthusiasm's tempered by, so I'm walking into a hospital,
yes,
immunocompromised in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. What even?
Well, but you're also such a personable person. How can you even hold yourself back?
Well, and that's really kind of been funny, because seriously, even as our department was coming to terms with this, we would find ourselves doing things and then apologizing to one another because we couldn't really maintain all of our distance, but we're so used to taking breaks and, hey, showing somebody something on our cell phone and then realizing we've been right there. And at one point we had a coworker, a previous coworker who's been rehired, and both of us, when I walked in and we saw each other, we just gave each other the biggest hug. We had masks on, but then we both backed up. And
You're
I said,
what have we done? Yeah.
So one thing I've learned is I probably don't need to be let out of the house.
It's okay, we just need to keep you inside.
Yeah, I have very little reserves when it comes to loving on people. But, and then the other side of that too is realizing my husband's in healthcare.
Yes,
I
Dr.
worked in healthcare and know enough about economics to realize we need to be careful with the timeline here, because neither his practice nor our local institutions can thrive long
If you don't have people coming in.
Well, and without our procedures, and so it's been kind of all over the board, you know.
Yeah, well, that's so interesting to think about. Like you almost can't focus on one of the difficulties too long. Another one comes in, like how do you tackle that, you know? And then and that's to say nothing of the health thing in particular. I thought that connects a little bit to what Hannah's been going through even recently, though, because you kind of had to come to grips with, okay, I'm high risk. What do I do here? And then Hannah, like, then a couple of weeks ago, you ended up having to take your son even to get tested. So like that I'm sure that came completely out of the blue.
It did. I mean, one day he just had a cough, and the next day my son had a cough and a fever. And as a parent now, you know, 2 months in, you just automatically think, does he have coronavirus? So we did. I called the pediatrician, and they wanted us to come in. The experience of going to the pediatrician is now completely different. We waited in our car, we were triaged in the car, and then we were allowed to come in a side entrance. And after testing negative for flu and strep, the doctor looked at me and he said, do you want to do the test? I said, yes. It was a Friday, so we did have to wait over the weekend to get the test results back. He did say that they were testing on Saturday and Sunday, but he just wasn't sure if we would be able to get results. So he did test negative.
Oh, praise the Lord.
But in that, there was a whole weekend of fearfulness. Does he have this? How many people has he, potentially exposed to the virus? And then there's just the dread of thinking about all those parents that you're going to have to call and tell, hey, your child might have been exposed to the virus because my son has it. I'm so glad that he doesn't. But it just reminded me that in this time, as we move forward, as the virus, as people get it, that we know we have to be gracious to people. We have to be gracious. My son did not purposefully, seek out, getting infected.
Of course.
So it was a reminder that grace is so important during this season.
Well, and especially, even grace amidst the anxiety, because I know that you're not an anxious person, and yet that was probably surprising in that moment how you felt when they're like, okay, let's test Aiden. Okay, see you in 72 hours. And you're like, I'm on the edge of my seat here. Like, talk a little bit more about that.
So yes, the doctor, it's just sobering, the whole process. They put on a new pair of gloves to do the test. They put it in a container. They double bag the test. And our pediatrician's office is eventually going to have the capability of in-office testing, but they aren't there just yet. So that's why they had to send it off. And then Monday morning, I just kind of expected when the doctor's office opened, they would give me a call. Well, they didn't. So I called them, and the receptionist said, well, the nurse will call you back. So you think, your brain goes, well, is she going to call me back because the receptionist can't tell me it's negative over, and like she's going to have to call back.
And the mortician will call you in an hour. You're like,
exactly.
What is happening here? Yeah.
Yes. So when the nurse called me back, she was very sweet, and she said his test came back negative. And of course, just with everything, I was overwhelmed. I started crying, and she was very, very kind and very compassionate. Our pediatrician's office said they have tested about 20 children so far for the virus, and none have come back positive.
Wow, praise the Lord for that. We'll come back to that in a second, but I wanted to take a quick second to exhort our friends at home and ask and remind you that we're live right now with all these friends and experts, right? I'm not supposed to call you experts here on stage, and you guys have the opportunity to ask some questions, and our communications director Joanne is taking those right now, and we'll be able to hopefully respond to some of those as we continue. I hope that you've got a good sense of what these men and women have been through in the past couple months, and I'm going to keep moving forward, and we'll see how the conversation develops. But Andres, I wanted to come back to you because especially recently, like what you and Iglesia, and I know you're even working with Pastor Mac a little bit, have been able to do in reaching out to the community has been wonderful. So talk a little bit about like Was there a particular spot where things changed and you knew, like you said before, God's timing is perfect? So, like, how did that perfection express itself, and then how were you able to jump back in?
Well, I think I would say this, that every house that we went in and take these boxes, so Pastor Patrick helped us to put all these boxes together. You can see that it was a huge blessing to these families. They were crying and they were saying, thank you for thinking about us, thank you for coming during this time, and it's just a huge blessing to be able to pray with them, and I think that's a huge blessing.
Well, because you guys were among some people that had been hit really, really hard. Would you say more health-wise or more economically?
I think economically, the people losing their jobs and, working part-time, and we got a lot of calls and say, hey, can you pray with us? Can you pray for my family? And so it was more about financial.
So do you think, and we just saw some pictures go by, you guys had great access to them, you're able to come pretty close to them, that's wonderful. Like, I guess in God's timing, it also makes me wonder if you had tried that 2 months ago, would people have even opened the door? So I'm interested in your response to that. Do you think that they were ready then, or like, what do you think happened?
Yeah, but I think during this time, people more kind of soft on their hearts because of the COVID-19, and they were, as soon as we were knocking the doors, you can see that it was a welcoming, like, it's a need in these houses. So
I agree that the softening, that's really real. I'd love to hear if Patrick has anything to say along those lines, because I know that, and praise the Lord, with the help of the Valleydale congregation, you guys have been able to give all kinds of food and resources to people in the community.
Yeah, one of the things that when I was saying earlier, praying through, and all of a sudden just opportunities come. One of the things that came out was a local ministry called Grace Klein.
Put that mic just a little bit higher so they
absolutely.
can hear.
Sorry. So one of the ministries was Grace Klein, and I noticed as I was praying, all of a sudden I got a notice that they are in desperate need of food because all the food banks had closed except for them. So they were servicing around 1,000 people a month, with food. And all of a sudden, when all these other food banks closed, every one of them came to them. Now, this is no lie. They sent out a report, I think it was a couple weeks ago. Since this COVID has started and the quarantine has started, they've served almost 60,000 people.
Wow, that's okay. Wow.
Yeah, and every one that comes that they've served, they have prayed with and they've shared the gospel. 60,000 people.
Praise the Lord.
And the cool thing about it is we as a church have been a part of that. We have done things for and come alongside that ministry since this time. So, yes, people are open to not only physical needs, but obviously spiritual needs. They know there's something more than just food that they need. And so absolutely.
Well, and the response, we were able to share this a couple of Sundays ago, the response to the Grace Klein and this drive that we did was massive, I would say, for our congregation. And there's just this desire for people to be able to do something, because with social distancing and whatnot, you don't feel like you can even approach anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was something that I learned when we did the first food drive. Was everybody that came, you could just see it, and it was all our people here. You could just see the love on their heart and the desire to want to do something. Because everyone that dropped off food was like, thank you for giving us this opportunity. We've been praying for opportunities to serve the community. But again, it goes back to that, what do you do? And so when we gave them an opportunity, man, they showed up big time here at the church. So I was blown away, to be honest with you.
Well, I hope that what do we do question is something that we can move forward in answering a little bit. And I definitely want to hear from Hannah and Lori on this. And Hannah, maybe you first, because I know that as time went on, I haven't really picked your brain about this before, but eventually I know that you started doing visits to different people in the church. Talk about how that developed.
Yes. So we had a very strong online presence, and during a staff meeting, Joanna our communications director, actually gave me the idea to start Hello from Miss Hannah. So preschoolers, I'm just used to being around them. My office sits in the middle of our preschool floor, and they're around me all day, every day. And then when you just don't see them for a long time, you miss them. So, and preschoolers love visits. They love, play dates and social interaction. So I thought, well, why not? We can absolutely do socially distanced hellos from Miss Hannah. So I have undertaken to visit preschool families. I bring a little bag for each kid that has essential preschool activities and supplies.
Can testify.
And I mean, that's really the big hit of the visit. The sweet thing is my kids have gotten to go with me on the visits. And when parents are comfortable with interaction, my kids have had the best time. And so it's been a blessing for me to get to see my preschoolers and at the same time for my kids to be involved in ministry.
Well, and props to you as well for being able to help your kids understand that that's something you got to feel out. Not everybody's at the same comfort level, and we have to be able to discern that.
We do. And we have definitely had visits where, we want to maintain our 6 feet. And my daughter is precious when she says coronavirus because she puts the accent on a different syllable. And so it just sounds funny to me when she says it. But we'll leave and she'll say, they didn't want us to get close because of coronavirus. And I'm like, yeah, they didn't. So, it's amazing what kids understand. My 8-year-old the other day told me, he said, Mommy, I don't just want coronavirus to be controlled. I want it to be contained. And I was like, man, out of the mouth of babes.
That's right. That really is amazing. Well, I've got to say the hellos from Miss Hannah were a huge hit. Obviously, in our house, we got kids 3, 2, and 1. And when she says essential preschool items, she's not joking. There were bubbles, there was Play-Doh, there's a coloring book,
and goldfish.
And wow, yeah. And the bubbles are so loved that they lasted perhaps 90 seconds before they were all over our sidewalk. So it was actually, that's another funny anecdote because I was, washing the sidewalk and bubbles were just flying up in the air. But we've heard from everybody about except for Lori, about how we've been able to reach out sort of in our own sphere. And I'd love to hear how that's changed because obviously I know you're very open, beautifully open with your faith. And just during that time, what does that look like for you? Because I know you're still going into work. Talk about that.
Right. Well, early on, being kind of one of my younger coworkers once referred to me to my daughter as Lori's my work mom. And of course, that made my heart sing because that's almost as important as the work that I do.
Beautiful.
So I kind of checked on people. I was like, how are you doing with this? I have a younger coworker who gave birth to her first child last week. And so she was working until a few weeks ago. And of course, that's a whole nother level of how does this affect me? What's happening in the pregnancy sphere? And
for sure.
So just keeping tabs on people. How are you doing with this? How's this going? And our director and managers were having to make some difficult phone calls and have conversations and just encouraging them that I was praying for them, that they didn't need to blame themselves for the difficult issues that they were trying to balance because none of us asked for this. This was happening to us. And that really helped, I think, our director at one point because she was having to make, phone calls, putting new employees off on who had given up other jobs. And so, just really kind of keeping tabs on people and saying, how are you doing with this? And then,
well, right, because everybody is struggling.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of which part of all this they're struggling with. And I guess I hadn't thought about this until now, but that's going to be a larger truth going forward. But it was true even beforehand. People are always struggling. They're either in the midst of a storm, one's right behind them, or one's right ahead of them. If anything, it's been a chance for this thing to come, it bubbles up just a little bit more to the surface. But it's interesting because as I've asked all of you about different experiences just being more out in the community, almost all of your answers have had some kind of component about what's still happening at home. And Lori, I want to stay with you because your experience is so unique because you had 2 college kids that came home.
not only college kids and loving having the opportunity to have them home again.
Oh, and they're great.
Which wouldn't be happening right now. But both of them are very involved with campus ministry. Our son
right.
is actually on staff with Navigators Campus Ministry. So the conversations began just before spring break when they were headed to North Charleston on a mission trip. And our son called us later one night and said, you know, Mom and Dad, I just need to talk to a couple of healthcare professionals that aren't on the media. Are you scared of us going? And we said, no, we're not. But here's what we suggest. You know, be in touch with headquarters. This is not just an Auburn issue.
Yes.
This is all over the country. Do they have guidelines? Understand in North Charleston when you get there, you know what symptoms to look for, what is the plan, is there telemedicine? And before they even got there, that information was coming out. Here's who we want you to call, and we want you to call before you come to get tested. And just like practically speaking, you know, do you have an isolation plan? And they actually cut their trip just one day short because the number of cases in North Charleston was beginning to increase.
Wow.
And one of the parents reached out and said, do y'all realize what's going on? And they said, yeah, I think we'll break things down and come on home, because they could sense them. And then our children, it was really sweet, they called and said, Mom, you know, maybe we need to stay in Auburn for 10 days because we don't want to, we've been out in the public. And I said, no, you come home. Well, Mama's heart needs you home, and we'll figure it out from there. But that was really sensitive.
Spraying them with Lysol as they come in the door.
Yeah. So that was really sensitive.
You know, it's so I love that story for multiple reasons. One is just thinking back to those couple of months ago when you were like, yeah, just go ahead and travel to the other place, you know, but be safe. And then like how that turned so quickly, like absolutely not, right. we won't go. My goodness. So that's we've kind of heard like the older children perspective. I want Andres to weigh in here for a second. Because you and me are in kind of the same boat. So helping kids that are so young understand like what the sickness is so hard. Maybe you might only have funny stories, but just talk to us, man.
It's just a learning thing in our house. You know, make sure our neighborhoods, there are like 8 kids around, and they're so used to go outside, play together.
Yes.
Going to one house to another house, and now it's just like, you're not going anywhere. And yes, I'm going. I say, no, you're not going. It's just a learning thing, you know, trying to tell them, hey, we got to stay home. And but it's praying. I think that once they see as a parents praying, and, you know, even Forrest, he keeps saying the virus, we don't want to get the virus. I think it hit on some point that, you know, we're trying to stay home.
My kids keep calling it the sickness. I guess that's what my wife, so it's the sickness. And it's been funny because so many times we'll tell them, like, you know, will you please stop hitting your brother? Will you please stop hitting your sister? And they're like, because of the sickness? And I'm like, no, just because you shouldn't hit people. Just because that's not a kind thing to do. I think I said this last time. I'll say it again, because my poor daughter Harper, her reward for being potty trained is that she will go to Chuck E. Cheese, and sadly that's been delayed indefinitely. So nearly every day, like, when are we going to Chuck E. Cheese? When the sickness is over? Okay, is the sickness over? No. Is it over now? No, it has not ended in this past minute. But and I know that Hannah, you already kind of talked about with your kids how you and Clear, you've helped them address it. Maybe you could weave that together with, like, it's not just our kids that we're having to address. You've even had to talk to your dad some, right?
Yes, and I know my mom is watching tonight. So
my mom too. I'm on my best behavior.
See, there you go. Yes. So when this all initially started, we were in a staff meeting on a Thursday afternoon, and I was bebopping around like nothing was wrong, went to this staff meeting, and we talked about having to cancel church on Sunday. And that was the first time I realized it was serious.
Right.
And my mom had plans to fly in the following Wednesday, and I called her immediately after that, and I said, Mom, you can't get on an airplane and fly. We're going to have to come pick you up. So yes, my mom spent 3 weeks with us when it all initially started, and she literally didn't leave my house. I mean, she was just there, and it was great because she got to spend time with the kids, and it was wonderful. But my dad, like Lori, is immunosuppressed. He had a liver transplant 15 years ago, so he takes medicine daily to keep him from rejecting his liver. So when all of this started, thankfully my parents live out, and they can pretty much quarantine just naturally, their way of life, and my mom will affirm that. But then their church made plans they live in Texas, so their church made plans to reopen on Mother's Day, May the 10th. And, my mom and I were talking about it, and I said, Mom, I know you guys are active, I know you love your church, but you and Dad cannot go back. First of all, just age-wise, and because Dad, struggles with...
How did that go? Was that a tense moment?
So I thought it would be, but my dad has come around and realized that it's important to protect his health. So they are going to be a few more months at home before they go back. They wade back into the church waters. Yeah,
I'm glad that the Spirit was able to intervene and help you through that tense moment. And I guess like the more we're digging into this, the more I feel like we're understanding that all of our experiences are so diverse. And you said it earlier, and I pray that we're just able to have grace with one another. Grace with your mom and your dad. What else there?
That is just one thing. I've read a lot during this time at home, and a lot of articles and news articles, and what it just essentially keeps coming back to is to have grace. I think too, just in thinking about gathering together as a church again, I've come back to that Philippians 2 passage, 2, 3, and 4, that talk about just putting others' interests above our own, and having the mind of Christ when we approach our return. And I think if that's the way we come into this new normal, it will be the best for everyone. Those who decide to come, those who decide to stay at home, that's the mindset we should have going into our return.
I couldn't agree more. And Lori, you could probably add to this what she's talking about, just like how these can create some tense moments because people are reacting to maybe the same situation differently, or maybe they're got different sources of information. You had an interesting testimony about one house where they were all over the map.
Yes. Well, I think you just realized that one friend had said something that was very insightful, is we're all in this together, but everybody's experience is different.
Yes.
And that's really wise. I have a friend who shared that she's really kind of playing referee between a younger sister who lives in a different household, but is really afraid to go out, and a 90-plus-year-old mother she can't keep home. And they both think the others lost their marbles, and she's trying to figure out how to mediate these two very opposing positions. And I think as we begin to reopen as a life group leader, what I've tried to do is reach out and individually and say, how are you feeling about this? Are you ready? Are you ready to go back to church? Because we were having to accommodate, okay, what service would you go to? And then how do we continue our life group online around everybody's readiness or lack thereof to return to the building, because we've got a schedule around that.
Right, and you're almost afraid, like if I say this or say we're doing this and it's not like a suggestion, that you might offend somebody or someone will think that you don't care for them or that sort of thing. I feel like we're in for a lot more of those moments where we just have to be like graceful ahead of time, graceful in the midst of it. It's just not going to be easy. I mean, you that's how this whole conversation started. You were like, I'm ready to go. Let's do some ministry. Like, well, pump the brakes at him,
No, anyway.
Did you guys have a reckoning after that, where you kind of, with you and the leadership at Glacier, you kind of came back together?
Yes. The kind of way we pray. One of the things that we did right away is doing prayer every day, which I'm grateful that everybody stepped up and, did that, taking the time. I think it's still we need to keep doing that. For people that they're not coming in, that they're not planning to be here, I think we still need to do that praying for one another.
Well, in the prayer that he's talking about, that's you guys have been doing that as a live thing on the Iglesia Valleydale prayer page for a long time, and it's wonderful. It's helpful, and it'd be interesting to hear y'all's perspective on, like, I'll put it this way: before the whole crisis began, it seemed like there was this divide in the ministry community, where it was like, well, social media, it's like a necessary evil, but you should probably be off it. And then overnight, it's like, well, you have to be on it. You have to. Was that a shift for you?
Yes. One thing for our community was a learning thing. We don't know much about technology and how log in and passwords and all that. But God worked everything through, that everybody learned. It was a new thing, but you can see God's hand through every step. People that they were struggle log in, the next day, find a way to do it. And that's Him. That's Him doing that.
Well, and what a great point that God is able to work through even like the taps on our phone. He works through our Wi-Fi signal. Like, if we really believe that He's in everything, of course He's there working. I mean, Hannah, has your strategy shifted, like with using more social media stuff?
Absolutely. In that, I started an Instagram page for our preschool ministry.
Amen.
I'd been intending to do it for forever, and this was it. This was the impetus. So we started a Instagram page for our preschool ministry. So many of my parents are millennials, and a lot of them are actually only on Instagram. So
Yes.
I've reached almost a whole new audience by creating a Instagram page for preschool.
Well, and I'm sure they're grateful for that too.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And it's given people also outside Valleydale an opportunity to see what our preschool ministry is doing here. And
Yeah, and Patrick, maybe you could talk some about that, because obviously because you've been doing our men's ministry as well, and you're probably doing stuff I don't even know about. How's your social media game changed?
Oh gosh, a lot.
Any pics of kitty litter?
Yeah, no. I stay away from that on social media.
It's probably wise.
No, yeah, it's new to me. I mean, I've been on Facebook, but not real active. But since this, one of the things that I started to do weekly is called Man Up Monday, and it's just a 2-3 minute video where it's just me kind of talking about a topic, something to help the guys. Like this past week was, how do you share your testimony with someone? And so just giving guys practical ways to rather lead their homes or to live on mission.
Yeah, and then the whole testimony. You got something?
Yes. Something that I was during this time, I think, God is giving us all this new thing to learn with the phones, technology. And I told the congregation, I say, don't take these conversations like normal. You can hear people talking about, I want to go back to normal, but use this time to pray. Ask them, how can I pray for you? How is your family? Not just like, yes, I'm doing okay, my mom is okay, everybody. No, take the opportunity. That's God is giving us all this time to pray for people, to pray, to impact, our friends, our community, and not just the normal phone call like you used to do. Oh, yeah, we're doing okay. No.
Dig in. Well, that's huge. I'm glad you touched on that, because obviously social media is the most recent technological advancement that we would focus on. And, there's video chat, and there's all that sort of thing. And Pastor talked about this 2 weeks ago when he was here. The biggest thing that has blessed people has just been traditional phone calls. Like picking up the phone. We all have a lot more time-ish these days, like we're at home, right? Picking up the phone, calling somebody, checking in, how are you doing? Like Lori was saying, even in the just around the office, like, how are you doing? No, really, how are you doing? Not like this isn't just a conversation starter and then we're off. Like, I really want to know. But actually, yeah, Lori, I didn't hear your perspective on the social media thing, because obviously you don't have like a ministry to run or a new Facebook page to make. But have you seen like people's activity online shift?
Well, I will say that our life group which usually meets at 9:15 on Sundays, we're meeting twice a week now. We're doing an additional study on Wednesday night.
Cool.
So we're more connected in some ways. And actually, our family went on a grand adventure a couple of weeks ago because our vacation was nixed, and I actually helped lead life group from a remote place in a hotel room, and I thought, hey, is there a job for this? Because, retirement coming up. I'm like, whoa, maybe we can spend more time out of town eventually.
Well, it's amazing, like the ways that the Zoom calls, the video calls. I can attest personally. Because we can't. It's very difficult for us to get going anywhere with the kids being as young as they are, and yet we can tune in with our life group. Obviously on mute. We can tune. We're muted. Sorry, we want to hear them. We can tune in a life group. We've had other just kind of fellowship moments with people that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. It's been really neat there. Well, I guess if there's something that we need to take away, it is that the gospel is going to find a way. I feel like if there's a story that's uniting you guys, it's that, yes, there was that difficulty early on. Perhaps there was the fits and starts of like, how do we get ministry going, even person to person, and yet the Lord gave you guys all a way in there. So I'm going to wrap us up here in just a second. But Patrick, one of the questions that came in is, are there going to be more opportunities soon, like another food drive? I'd love to hear you talk if there's anything coming up, because people really do want to participate.
Yes, absolutely. You'll probably be getting some communication, and I'm not the communication person, so I don't want to speak too much out of line. But for the Sunday night event that we're going to be doing, we're going to be asking people they can bring a donation, and we're going to be getting that list out.
Great.
And so you'll have an opportunity to hear on that Sunday night, the 31st, at our Sunday night service, drive-in service, you'll be able to have a chance to do a food drive. So absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, and a couple of announcements then as we prepare to get going here. But the event that Pastor Patrick's talking about is on May 31st, and it's in the evening. We're starting at 6:30. Starting at 6:30 that evening, we are having a drive-in service. There's going to be much more solid information to come. But myself and Pastor Mac are really excited about it. It actually falls on the church calendar the day that's traditionally recognized as Pentecost. So that's the birthday of the church, and we'll be singing songs and having some times of prayer. Pastor will be preaching a homily, all in line with that. That's on the 31st. And then, guys, continue in prayer because, like Lori had just said, we're all preparing for sort of the quote-unquote reopening. And we are having services with people invited into the worship center starting on June 7th. They're at our normal times, 9:15 and 10:45. So pray, because we've got a lot of work to do as far as making sure that we're sensitive to the social distancing needs of everyone. I'm not worried at all because we're making Patrick do everything. And just only slightly kidding. But I wanted to thank you guys one more time for being here and for volunteering your time. And I hope that this has been a help to our community to know Christ, helping you know Christ and live for Him. And I'm going to thank you guys, and I'm going to let you all wave us out. We'll see you guys later. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.